We are also covering the legal angle of the morning's arraignment. And to help us with that, we want to bring in a former prosecutor, Scott Tenley, joining us over Zoom. Scott, thanks so much for taking time with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Right.
I was looking into this a little bit, and it seems like the defense is likely to file some motions after this whole kind of spectacle happens. What are they able to do here?
First of all, I don't think it's likely. I think it's an absolute guarantee that President Trump will be attacking the legal basis of the indictment and the proceeding as a whole. So I expect we'll see a motion to dismiss saying that these are improper charges. We'll see allegations and motions about how the grand jury operated, whether there were leaks, whether anything happened was inappropriate. I think we could also see motions trying to recuse the judge because of his handling of a prior case, and even trying to move this whole case to a friendlier locale outside of Manhattan where President Trump thinks he could get a better jury pool.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, both sides have to be able to play within the bounds of the legal system. They're in their right to file all those motions. It just kind of ties things up for a while. There's been a lot of conversation about the lack of video cameras that will be allowed inside the courtroom. We're told 5 still photographers will be allowed to take pictures for several minutes before the arraignment process happens. No phones or laptops, though, allowed inside the courtroom or the spillover location. You know, former President Donald Trump is someone who usually likes having the cameras around him, but in this case, he's not necessarily the ringleader of the courtroom and the ringleader of the cameras. How do you think this plays out?
Well, it's interesting because the judge is bound by New York state law, which has one of the most restrictive rules about cameras in the courtroom. Now, that could change as we get closer to the time when the trial happens, but it's going to give President Trump, if he doesn't have a gag order, more control and influence into the public's understanding of what the proceedings are, because they aren't going to be watching them firsthand. They're getting them through media filters and even potentially from the president. So that's actually, in some ways, an upper hand to the president, that people can't see what's going on inside for now.
I would think, though, that if you are the former president's attorneys, in some ways, he's someone who's very unpredictable. If you have video cameras inside the courtroom for weeks, if not months at a time, you don't know what he's going to do. So it may be beneficial now, but I don't know that it necessarily plays to his favor later.
Well, keep in mind, in a criminal proceeding, the defendant himself or herself very rarely ever speaks. It's all going to be through the attorneys. If President Trump's in court, we can expect his attorneys will advise him how he has to behave himself and stay on a short leash. So he's not going to be speaking and representing himself in those proceedings. But that's a fair point. I mean, listen, this is an individual who's shown he wants to have the spotlight, he wants all the attention, and he wants to be in control. And that's exactly what he's not going to have in a state court proceeding.
There, of course, since this is the first indictment that we've seen of a U.S. president, there's been a lot of hoopla around it. There's a lot of media coverage. I'm reading this morning that reporters are saying there's a lot more media than either pro or anti-Trump supporters at this point at any of these locations. Why do you think the former president should actually be more worried about the classified documents case, something that we're not touching a lot on because we're following what's happening here today?
Well, for 2 reasons. First, by all accounts, this has been an incredibly meticulous and thorough investigation by the special counsel. And what I think might frighten the president most is that 2 federal judges, one here in Orange County, California, has ruled that the president used his lawyers to commit crimes and has required those lawyers to testify to the special counsel's grand jury. That is information about what President Trump did and said that could be devastating. And the second reason is that mishandling classified information and obstruction of justice and the federal system are charges that could very well result in jail time. And that's really not something that he has to be worried about in the New York case for a first-time offender. But in the federal system, he's in a lot more jeopardy.
This also seems a lot less political. It seems like the government actually just wants these documents back in this case.
And that's why he's gotten himself into trouble, because the government, from what we've heard, had made every effort they could to get them back, first without subpoenas, then with subpoenas, then with search warrants. But when the president is preventing or obstructing the government from getting these documents back, that's when it turns into a federal offense. And that's why he finds himself in this potential jeopardy today.
All right. Well, Scott, thanks for making this all so digestible. We appreciate it. And thanks for tuning in with us this morning. We appreciate it. Our in-depth continuing coverage of this historic indictment will continue all morning long.